Barcelona have been astonishing for most of the season. In their first few La Liga games, they only won by a small margin, but it wouldn't take long before they would start to destroy everything in their way. Opponents like Valladolid, Girona, Villarreal, Alaves, Sevilla, Barcelona defeated all of them quite easily. On top of that, they won against Bayern Munich and Real Madrid in the same week with 4-1 and 4-0. But in their latest two La Liga games, Barcelona lost against Real Sociedad and they drew against Celta Vigo. On top of that, if you compare Hansi Flick's Barcelona to that of Xavi 2 years ago, then Hansi Flick's Barcelona now have 3 points less than Xavi's Barcelona had after the same amount of games in La Liga. Does that mean that we've just been massively overrating Hansi Flick's Barcelona? Well, this Barcelona team are still the real deal, but in the latest games, it's become clear that they do have some weaknesses. And in this video, we'll take a deeper look at those, so let's just get right to it. First of all, Barcelona lacks squad depth. Look at Lamine Yamal for example. He wasn't on the pitch in Barcelona's two most recent games, and a lot of people will say that with him, Barcelona would have won. It just seems that when you take away Lamine Yamal, this team isn't half as good as it was anymore. But that's not just because of Lamine Yamal's sheer individual class, it is also because of a lack of depth. Barcelona don't have a player who's similar to Lamine Yamal on the bench, and consequently, the shape and dynamic of the whole team changes without him. If you play Rafinha there instead of him, you've got a totally different profile. Rafinha is at his best when he's making runs, whereas Lamine Yamal is more of a playmaker. Rafinha is the kind of player to receive the through balls, Lamine Yamal is the one who plays them. That's in general what kind of players they are. And with Rafinha playing at right wing in Lamine Yamal's absence, you've got a problem at left wing as well, because you don't have that same player anymore making runs forwards. Usually, Rafinha at that left wing position is a crucial element of this team, and without him you can play Dani Olmo or even Pau Victor in there, but they don't offer you the same kind of threat that Rafinha does. Dani Olmo is really at his best when he's that attacking midfielder, so you won't have him at his best when he's at left wing, while you also won't have a player making runs at left wing anymore. So long story short, without Lamine Yamal, the whole shape and structure of the attack just changes, and there's less movement and creativity. Hansi Flick's Barcelona just lack depth. If you take away a player in most positions, they cannot be replaced by a similar profile, and that is problematic. There is one player that we might need to mention though, Tony Fernandes. This 16-year-old La Masia prodigy does kind of resemble Lamine Yamal. He's a left-footed playmaker and he can either play as a false 9 in attacking midfield or at the right wing. If Hansi Flick really wants to keep the same shape in attack without Lamine Yamal, he might want to consider giving Tony Fernandes a chance at right wing. In that case, you do still have a creative playmaking right winger. But Tony Fernandes is still only 16 and he's also been struggling with an ankle problem in the last couple of weeks, so maybe this isn't the right moment to give him a chance in the first team. Apart from him though, Barcelona do actually just lack depth in their squad, and that doesn't just go for the attack. As a matter of fact, Barcelona's lack of depth is probably the worst at left back. Without Alejandro Balde, Barcelona are just not the same team anymore. There is Gerard Martin as his backup, but he might not be good enough to play for Barcelona in the big games. In quite a lot of games so far, he looked quite shaky, he's technically nowhere near as good as Alejandro Balde, he won't offer you the ssame threat in attack. Alejandro Balde is too irreplaceable right now. You can also play Hector Fort in there, but right back might be his best position and he's probably also Barcelona's only real backup right back. You cannot have just one player as a backup fullback both at the right and at the left. So Barcelona really just need more depth at the fullback positions, especially someone who can offer the same as Alejandro Balde does, because that's the issue with Gerard Martin. There is of course Alex Valier, who is currently being loaned out to Celtic. He might be a good backup option for Balde in the future, but another option is maybe Alphonso Davies. If you compare Davies with Balde, then you have to admit that they're really similar. They even have almost the exact same profile. A player like Alphonso Davies would probably solve a lot of issues for Barcelona right now. So in general, one of Barcelona's main problems is that they lack squad depth, mainly in attack and at the fullback positions. If you take away one of the main players, you cannot really replace them with someone else. I mean, just imagine Lewandowski gets out injured for 1 month. What would Hansi Flick even do? You cannot tell me that Pau Victor would save Barcelona. He's promising, but he's not the same kind of pure striker that Lewandowski is and that Barcelona probably need. Barcelona are too reliant on certain players, not because they're that good, just because they're the only players with their specific profile. And that's a problem that Joan Laporta needs to solve as soon as possible. Barcelona have more problems than just squad depth though. Because if you compare Barcelona like they were in their latest two games with Barcelona against Bayern Munich or Real Madrid, then there is one clear difference that you see. They're just not as disciplined anymore. Earlier this season, discipline and drive were things that typified Barcelona. That's something that Hansi Flick insisted on against Real Sociedad and Celta, but even before that against Espanyol and Red Star Belgrade, Barcelona weren't as sharp as they were before. They conceded more chances, and consequently they also conceded more goals. At the same time, the ball circulation in midfield wasn't as quick and fluent as it was before, and they lost possession more frequently. And it is especially when putting pressure high up the pitch that this is a problem for Barcelona. Hansi Flick's Barcelona relies on the high press to actually play well. One of the reasons why they scored that much was because they often recovered the ball high up the pitch. Also, one of the reasons why Barcelona were still quite solid defensively was that if you recover the ball high up the pitch, you immediately neutralize the danger of the opponents. In all of Barcelona's great victories under Hansi Flick so far, the high press was at the base of everything. I mean, just look at this stats. In La Liga this season, Barcelona on average recovered 31% of the ball in the opponent's half. But against Osasuna, Real Sociedad and Celta, that was only 22%, 18% and 24%. Those are the 3 La Liga games where Barcelona didn't win. And if Barcelona don't apply the high press properly, then it is for a big part because of a lack of discipline from the players. If they play at 100%, it seems like Barcelona are always going to win. That's something that Hansi Flick himself has said numerous times as well. So one of Barcelona's main problems is that they've lacked discipline and sharpness in the recent games. But for what reason actually? It's not like the players don't want to win anymore all of a sudden. So why have they lost that edge recently? Well, just think about the start of the season or those big games against Bayern Munich or Real Madrid. Barcelona hadn't won anything yet, and they were even in a quite precarious situation in the Champions League after losing to Monaco. In other words, they really had to prove themselves to the world. They had everything to fight for, especially in those big games, against opponents that they were hammered by multiple times over the course of the last years. The players were determined to show that Barcelona had changed. Hansi Flick had just arrived as well. They didn't want to disappoint them. They were always going to follow his orders. More recently though, the vibe around Barcelona has changed. Especially after beating both Real Madrid and Bayern Munich, the world suddenly started considering Barcelona as one of the best teams in the world again. Barcelona were first in La Liga, they had destroyed most of their opponents, I mean, they were in a great place. And that's the problem. When you're in a great place, it is way harder to still show that same kind of determination that you had when you had to get there. That's just a general concept really, and that's maybe one of the reasons why a lot of players have lost that edge that they still had some weeks ago. And if you're Barcelona, then you are the team to beat at the moment. Every team will be at 100% against you. You cannot afford to slack off. On top of that, there's just a lot of games over the course of the season as well. It's totally understandable that some of these players get tired after a moment. Against Real Sociedad, for example, I think that was a huge reason why Barcelona lacked that sharpness that they usually have. Barcelona's lack of discipline in recent games has cost them points, but it is maybe because of those wake-up calls that we'll see Barcelona at their best again very soon. There's one last weakness that Barcelona might have and that we just have to mention: their lack of experience. A lot of these players are still at the dawn of their career. Think about Pau Cubarsí or Marc Casado. Every once in a while, they will encounter situations that they've never been in before. And as you learn through making mistakes, they will simply make some mistakes because they haven't had a chance to make those mistakes before yet. That's just normal, and in most games, these players perform really well, but against Celta for example, Marc Casado might have not gotten his second yellow if he would have been more experienced. That is the kind of detailed situation where experience helps you out, and next time, Marc Casado might not make that error anymore. Learning through experience is a natural process, and you just have to accept that along the way, you're sometimes going to see players make mistakes that they'll eventually learn from, but that cost you the game right now. Same story with Ronald Araujo's red card against PSG. If Araujo ever ends up in a similar situation in the future, I don't think he'll make the same decision that he made back then. Eventually, those kind of mistakes help players reach their true potential. So now the big question is whether Barcelona will be able to bounce back again. The lack of squad depth is obviously a problem that you cannot just solve from one day to another, and as long as Lamine Yamal and Alejandro Balde aren't in there, this Barcelona team simply aren't at their strongest. Apart from that though, the lack of discipline is something that can change immediately. Barcelona started to slowly slack off after having won El Clasico. They were on top of the world, and that is a damn hard place to stay in, because you have everything you want, while any team you play against wants nothing more than to beat you. That's something that Barcelona have experienced firsthand in these last few games, and now they're probably back with their feet on the ground. And that is why I think that we will see Barcelona bounce back again in their next few games. People are starting to doubt them again. People are saying that they're not the same without Lamine Yamal. People are starting to question Hansi Flick. So, briefly, Barcelona have got something to prove again. And that is huge for the coming weeks. I think that against Brest and against Las Palmas, we will see a Barcelona that apply the high press relentlessly. Chances are that you're watching this video after Barcelona's game against Brest, and I wouldn't be surprised if they've won that game after having put in a performance where every player gave it his all. And because of those two recent La Liga games, some people might have actually started doubting whether Barcelona can actually win trophies this season. Well, let's face it won't take long before Lamine Yamal returns to the pitch, and Barcelona's lack of discipline might have only been a temporary problem. Barcelona are completely back with their feet on the ground now, and I think that in December they might very well silence every doubter again. Xavi's Barcelona in the 22-23 season might have had 3 more points than Hansi Flick's Barcelona at the same point, but believe me when I say that within a couple of months, that could very well be different. On top of that, Hansi Flick's Barcelona and Xavi's Barcelona both played against Bayern Munich, and well, yeah. So don't worry, Barcelona might have slacked off in their recent games, but chances are that they'll bounce back even stronger, and I hope that against Brest, we'll see them at their usual level again. So, that was it for today's video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and feel free to share your own opinion in the comments down below. And of course, Força Barça, and have a good day.